Alexa, turn on lamp 1.
Okay,
Alexa, what time is it?
the time is 8:42 a.m.
Alexa, what day is it?
Today is Thursday, March 8th.
Yes, we are going to be continuing in pursuit of the mechanism, the incredibly important mechanism that produces inbreeding depression, and as it turns out, it produces outbreeding depression. All right, some days you have to learn a new word. Um, uh, Three most important things, I guess, in society or relationships: tools and words. I like the old ones, and I understand if you don't want to learn a new one, but grit your teeth. The word is zygote, and we'll be using it in two forms. It means yoke, as in a yoke of oxen. In histology, no, you don't need to learn that word. The word means a cell that has been formed by a sperm entering an egg, also called an ovum. So, sperm plus ovum gives you zygote. Males produce sperm, females produce ova, and when they get together, you can form a zygote. When we speak of the mechanism of infertility, first logical step is to distinguish between pre-zygotic infertility and post-zygotic infertility. So there are two forms of the word zygote we have to know. Pre-zygotic is what happens before the zygote forms, and post-zygotic happens afterwards. Since there is clearly a mechanism, as Sibley pointed out, for relative infertility brought on by lack of closer kinship. Is it pre-zygotic, post-zygotic, or both? The Icelandic data we looked at earlier showed lower kinship reduced the number of children and the number of grandchildren. To a first approximation, that suggests that both pre-zygotic and post-zygotic mechanisms are in action. In other words, when the number of children is reduced, that could be pre-zygotic. Yeah, I know there could be some post-zygotic element in that, because you could produce a zygote that never divided. That would be post-zygotic, and you would never be able to tell that from just there never was a zygote. But uh, but basically, the post-zygotic has to be number of grandchildren. All right, on the pre-zygotic and post-zygotic thing, I initially was very unhappy with the distinction, because life's a cycle, right? What's pre-zygotic in one generation is post-zygotic in the generation before. So what's the difference? But turns out that if you're at a computer program, the computer program is going to expect you to be very clear about what you're talking about. Okay, original computer program modeled only a post-zygotic um, uh, mechanism, using my best effort to make it act like an epigenetic process. So I was eager to spread what I had learned. Um, I had copies made on CDs. Wasn't all that eager that I wanted to give away the program. I just wanted you to give away copies. So I had the executable code, not the source code, locked onto some CDs. Sent the master to place in Israel, the only place in the world at that time would make protected copies of anything but music. There was jam and toast. You could burn a CD in toast, which meant you copied it, or you could burn it in jam, which meant that your copy couldn't be copied. Well, fair enough. But you couldn't do that with data or anything else, only with music. In order to do anything with music, you had to do business with this group in Israel. So I got a message saying that some of the things included were in folders, and they couldn't properly secure the disk if they couldn't see everything out of folders. Really. Um, yeah, if I'd been paranoid before, that went away. Yeah, no. This is not low suspicion. This is obviously, no question. I don't want anybody, if I've got real secrets, and I really don't, but if I got real secrets, that was just intellectual property. You know, buy it and sell it on the market. Um, uh, if I had real secrets, I wouldn't want people to know what my folders were named. Much, I'm sorry, don't go in there. You just locked it. They needed to get all, obviously, they had either unskilled people or a computer program that would go in and copy everything. So, anyway, um, uh, oh, right. So now it was protected. Look, if they thought it was important enough to steal, well, that would be good enough to me. For me, besides, I'd copyrighted the source at that point, and so they couldn't uh, rob me. I really had no suspicion they were doing that. Um, the Even in my suspicious moments, no, that wasn't going to happen. So anyway, got it locked on the disk, um, and any attention was welcome. I still have a couple hundred copies. If you want one, uh, I'll send it as a souvenir. Your current operating system may not work with it because it's kind of old fashioned, and your security system may say, "Oh no, that's not registered as safe. We have to keep it out." Um, is so You need an old security with no old computer with no security. Yeah, you can turn off your security, but you might make it work. But is there a virus? I've never had any evidence for it, but the um, never had any evidence for a virus, but it has been out of my hands. I cannot swear to it. So that's a souvenir. If you want that program, I'm going to give you the source code later. All right, source code, free, open and above board. You can look at it. We'll go over it together. To a degree, it's kind of tedious. Um, so you don't really need it for anything. Um, and so, just send me an envelope. I'll send you a copy of the old CD and initial it or something. I don't know. But you can have it. If it turns out to be really popular and hundreds of people are doing it, I may start saying, wait a minute, this is getting to be a pain. Uh, Send a self addressed envelope. And I don't think that's going to happen. If it does, well, if you move quickly, you'll be the first, and I can just send it to you. Yeah. Um, how do you get a hold of me? Well, this is a YouTube. You can send me a message, and we'll figure out a way I can get my an address to you. Um, So you don't really need it. You can get the source code. I will give you the source code. Um, Check it out. Make sure it looks safe. Compile it and run away. You're on your own. And the new version is both pre-zygotic and post-zygotic. You can have one or both kinds of mechanism working. Um, uh, but if you don't turn the pre-zygotic on, effectively you have the old program. So I tweaked parameters, and you may find yourself doing a lot of tweaking until I got this. This is a purely artificial thing. Got that? This is a computer printout of numbers that came from the computer code. Right? Hey, kind of looks like that might be damped oscillation, rapid rise, slow fall, rapid rise, slower fall. Yeah, that's just what our fruit flies did. Um, um, so I think we're on the track for the mechanism. We sent it. We know it's there. We know we're moving in the right direction. Um, uh, we see evidence for post-zygotic mechanism in the lab, but on initial experiment with the fruit flies, um, uh, um, we saw no evidence for a pre-zygotic process. If there is one, it must have limited power. All right, Spanish uh, learned that Cortez had murdered Montezuma. They were shocked. You don't murder kings if you're working for a king. So they weren't really quite ready to give Mexico and all the treasures back to the Mexicans, but they brought the family of Montezuma to Spain to join the royalty in Spain. Okay, so the Spanish had gone, their ancestors left Africa, turned north and then west, and wound up in Europe. The Some other people had gone east and then north, and had wound up in the Western Hemisphere, pretty much the ancestors of the um, Aztecs, among others. So Montezuma's ancestors and Cortez's had been separated for 30,000 years, um, 1,000 generations. Um, all right. So um, we can believe that any pre-zygotic infertility must have limited power. You can't get absolute infertility on the basis of pre-zygotic infertility alone. Otherwise, Montezuma's descendants would not be in Spain now, and they are, in fact, in Spain. Okay, we've seen damped oscillation in the lab and the computer model. Look at some animals in the wild. We'll do that next. So what we have here is the first model. The computer model, the pure post-zygotic model, gives us damped oscillation, just as our fruit flies did in the lab. And at this point, we had no evidence for a pre-zygotic mechanism. That changes later. We also will be looking at folic acid later, but not yet. Okay, so that's the first step toward developing a computer model of the mechanism of infertility that is brought on by the Sibley curve. So we'll look at some wild animals next show. Okay.